The Graphic Histories Podcast.
I got bit by a radioactive bug. I tried an experimental drug. Went up for a stroll on a gamma testing range. I found an enchanted hurricane. I made a serum that made me small. I modified the serum so it would make me tall. Radioactive isotope in my eyes. Dying alien helped me accessorize. I gained the proportion and strength of a spider. Now I'm invincible and I can fly. I lost my sight, my other senses were heightened. I'm gonna put on my pajamas and go fight crime.
Hey there, and welcome to the Graphic Histories Podcast. My name is André, and I will be your trivia host. Big thanks to I did it again. See, I'm a trivia host as a side job that I do, in which I host trivia at a local bar. And sometimes I just get in this mindset of doing the same intro as I do for the show as I do when I do trivia. And it just slips in every once in a while. And I usually catch it and take it out. And I think I've addressed it on the show before. But yeah, every once in a while it slips in like it just did. So let's try that again. I am André Mayette. I am your host. Big thanks to Uka the Mock for our theme song, Superpowers. And big thanks to you, gentle listener, for tuning in once again to another fun-filled show. Today's episode features Stephen E. Gorodon, who is an animator who worked on such projects as Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, Cool World. There's so many, it's hard to put them all. American Pop, he worked on Gargoyles, he worked on Wolverine the X-Men, he worked on X-Men Evolution, worked on, so many things it's hard to even, Batman cartoon, just ridiculous amount of amazing projects. Anastasia, the Swan Princess, 8 Crazy Nights, and the list goes on. We talk about a lot of it in the episode, and it's fun because he, like, American Pop is something that I mention and talk about in the episode with him. That's something I found as a young child that it was animated, and I thought, hey, this looks interesting and different. And my brother's 5 years older than me. We watched it one day, and he really dug it because he was like a teenager, and I didn't really understand it, but I loved it. I don't know if it's just the style, the roto-scope animation, all that stuff just sort of spoke to me in some weird way. And the adult themes I didn't really get as well because I was, too young to really understand them or have the experience to put them into context. But just seeing it just really struck a chord with me. And actually, I should really go back to it. I recently found the album on vinyl. And, I'd like to go listen to that and then watch the movie again. It's a fantastic film. In fact, check out anything by Bakshi, especially the ones that Gordon worked on. Mr. Gordon worked on. They're all fantastic and very interesting in their own way. Fire and Ice is another one that is super cool. We talk about on the show as well. So tune into that. Today, as I'm recording this intro, it is Saturday, which is the last day of the play I'm in, which is Kurt Vonnegut's Happy Birthday 1 to June. It's been a very interesting run. A dark comedy, or black comedy as I call this, is interesting to listen to the audience's reactions. Some nights they laugh at the overtly comedic parts. Sometimes they laugh at the darkly comedic parts. Sometimes they laugh at both. Sometimes they laugh at times you don't expect them to laugh. And every once in a while they laugh at a joke that you really love, but never gets a laugh. And that happened last night, which was fun. But they were one of my co-stars there in the play. He said, I said, it's a different audience because they were laughing at like some of the really dark parts of the play. And he goes, yeah, they're sick, which made me laugh. If you like Kurt Vonnegut, if you're familiar with his work, this play is very, very much a Kurt Vonnegut production with that sort of sardonic writing style, comedic sense of humor that goes into some dark places, but also kind of injects a little levity into it while that's happening. I loved it. It's a fantastic experience. The play has been decently attended, not as much as normal, but this town tends to really just love the goofy comedies, which is fine. But I think there's a place for darker, more adult content, and by God, I'm going to continue to try to bring it here. So come hell or high water. Last year's production of Frankenstein that I helmed was really rewarding and a fantastic experience, and this one was just as good for me. So next year, maybe subsequent years, I'll figure out what's to come. But for now, super happy. We got 2 more performances today, a matinee and then a night show. So I can't linger too long, but it's been a very rewarding experience. Super happy to have done it, and very proud of it. Another thing that's coming up is Halloween drops on Tuesday, which is one of my favorite times of the year. But because of these plays, I haven't been able to, like last year as well, I haven't been able to engage with it in the way I normally do. I'd love to try to be one of those folks that watches a horror movie a day for all of October. But I generally watch a lot of horror movies anyway. But still, it'd be really fun to be able to do that. But I'm going to have to, I guess, take consideration with myself that I'll just get to watch a bunch on Halloween night and hang out with my wife and do that. So that sounds pretty fun. I'm excited about that. And hopefully we get a few trick-or-treaters. We never get many in my neck of the woods because I'm a little bit out of town. So most of the kids just go into places where there's a bunch of houses right beside each other. But my neighbors have a lot of Halloween decorations out. So maybe this year we'll get their kids, their new neighbors. So we'll see. Yeah. But without much further ado, I suppose you should just get into my conversation with Stephen E. Gordon. And I never thought to ask him why the E was important. I mean, I'm just assuming it's for IMDb or for credits because there's lots of other Stephen Gordons out there. But if you're looking him up, it's Stephen E. Gordon. And great guy, great conversation, really fun, and an astounding body of work. And it sounds like there's more to come. So tune in and enjoy my conversation with Stephen E. Gordon.
I cannot hear you.
Oh, that's probably because I had the mute button on.
Oh, okay, good. Okay, good. Thought maybe it was a setting on my end. Okay, good.
No, totally me. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Excellent. So how are you?
Good. How are you? Took a while to settle this time.
Oh, that's all quite all right. I'm at the mercy. You guys are busy people with busy schedules, so I'm just happy to have you on. I don't need you to do a backflip just whenever you're for free. So
I appreciate that. Thank you.
awesome. I like the beard. I'm a good company. I feel like I'm looking at my future right now, actually.
I hope not.
Well, it's funny because a lot of guys my age, theirs have turned gray, but I know there's something about redness that doesn't go gray, but it hasn't yet. So I'm still holding on to still hold on to it while I can.
Well, there you go. Good.
Awesome.
A few more years yet.
And, so where are you calling from?
California.
Balmy day out there, it looks like.
Not bad. It's cooled off today. It was only 70 or so today, whereas all last week it was like in the 90s and higher.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah,
pretty warm. I'm in Nova Scotia, in Canada. Yeah, so a little bit of a different shift. We're getting into our fall now, so it's getting a little cooler up here.
Nice.
Awesome.
Good.
So
we plan on getting up there to check it out, but
send me a message and I'll see if I can put you in touch with some people. Like I know a few folks that work with some of the cons around here, so I'm sure they'd be happy to.
I'd love to do that. Yeah.
And
I think I mentioned that my family's from there.
Oh yeah, you did. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. My mother is from Halifax and my father's from St. John.
Oh, beautiful.
The area. Yeah.
Yeah. Halifax is where those cons are. HalCon is the one that most people put on. Which is a pretty decent one every year. It's actually just starting this weekend, actually. I guess it'll have to be next year's, but
that's okay. I've got plenty to do. So
awesome.
In a couple of weeks, I'm doing. I don't know if you've heard of it, CTNX, which is kind of an animation specific con out here in Burbank, and then in December I'm doing LA Comic Con. So
you're keeping active.
Yeah. Well, if they're having me, I'll do it. So
where's home for you? Where were you born?
I was born in California.
Really?
So,
yeah, cool. What right in like what part?
Southern California.
Wow.
The Valley. I don't know how familiar you are with that, but
as much as Karate Kid taught me about the Valley, that's about it.
Yeah, that's the Valley. Yes, there you go. Yeah. It's basically a suburb of Hollywood in LA. So
most of my American geography is usually related to film. So
well, the Karate Kid is definitely a Valley show or movie or whatever. So
did you feel like it captured the spirit of that time period at the I guess in the 80s?
Yeah, I guess so, but a lot of shows kind of did, because they shot a lot of stuff in the Valley and whatnot those days. So even if it wasn't intended to be that, to capture the feeling, they did, whether they liked it or not. So
what brought your parents from St. John, New Brunswick and Halifax, Nova Scotia to California?
Well, not exactly sure, but my dad's mother used to vacation out in California for some reason. And we never figured out why that was a thing with her. She would go out on her own on vacation. And I guess she had 3 sons, and they all came out and lived with her out here and stuff. So, and obviously they all brought well, actually my dad was the only one that was married at the time, but a lot of people came out from the Halifax area and stuff to Southern California, either coast, but a lot of them were from here. My mother was like the last of 16 kids or something, and most of them came out here. So,
oh, wow. Interesting. So, how brothers, sisters, how many of them are you in your clan?
I've got 2 brothers and a sister.
Oh, so. Cool. And were you enthralled with animation from a young age? Were you always a drawer?
Well, so more or less, yeah, artist, trying to be at least, but it wasn't until I was in high school that I got, liked animation as well as anyone, but I never, for the life of me, considered animation as an option. That wasn't what I was aiming for. I was looking towards going to school and becoming an illustrator if I could. And in high school,
were you a comic book fan? Is that what led you to illustrations?
Yeah. Yeah. Did liked comics a lot when I was a kid, and we tried to do it, me and my brothers and stuff, but really slipshod stuff and whatnot. But
what were the ones that gravitated you? Like what ones did you?
X-Men. I like X-Men, Captain America, mostly the Marvel stuff. Much more into that than the DC stuff. I thought the DC stuff was pretty much silly at that time in the 60s.
Really? That's interesting. Yeah. It's funny that because I always kind of, that's a comparison that I feel like is made between those 2 companies a lot, that one seems a bit more fanciful than the other. The other has 1 foot kind of in reality. And it's funny that you see that more in the 80s, 90s, I find, but it's funny that even back then, at that time period, you can still see
back then it was all those silly stories about Superman. And it was the cliche stuff with, now Lois Lane marries him, or she gets superpowers, or Jimmy Olsen. It's all those silly what if type stories that they used to do.
Yeah, there's a mermaid or something. It's always ridiculous.
Exactly. Yeah, it's always some goofy stuff that it was it'd be like reading Archie comics, which perfectly fine, but there wasn't any serious content in it. Whereas not until Neil Adams kind of snuck in, I think that was about when Marvel DC Comics started to get stepping it up into a more real thing. With the Green Arrow and Green Lantern, drug addiction thing, and the Batman becoming more of a real detective again. And
yeah, I guess that was a pretty hard right turn. I suppose that was their first integration to adult sort of comics, going straight to teenage drug use is this is kind of jumping in the deep end.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's interesting. Oh, cool. Yeah, no, that's something I always find funny about. I'm guessing Stan Lee may be the reason, but there's always some element that was injected into that kind of kept the Marvel side of things, very realistic. Because even a lot of the other guys, when they went over to the competition, eventually it just kind of almost went back to, except for Kirby, I guess, it kind of went back to pretty goofy stuff.
Yeah, I think that was kind of the difference in the brands at that time in the 60s. Excuse me. But eventually they started to get a little bit closer, and then Marvel was guilty of a lot of silly stuff too after a while.
Oh, but for sure. Yeah, they're not the paragon of adult content. Well, not adult content, but adult thematic content.
No. Yeah. But at least they for superhero content. Comics, they kind of kept it kept 1 foot in reality for the most part. This early Spider-Mans, but if you read even the early X-Men's, it was amazingly tacky.
Yeah,
you always think, oh boy, X-Men, but half the time Professor X is spending his time learning a gene. Wow.
Yeah. I did find that as a while ago I got. A lot over the years, I've gotten tons of those, omnibus editions, or the essential ones that have the first 25 issues in black and white of of some of those old comics. And I remember reading the Thor one, and then getting like, I don't know, 5-10 issues in and being like, wow, there's a lot of, it's mostly just Thor agonizing over the fact he can't tell Jane Foster that he's Thor. Well, he's he's got this cane, he's limping around. And then there's like ridiculous stuff where he just like puts like, there's a guy that gets kidnapped in a hospital bed and he just attaches the bed to his hammer and like swings it and just throws it and takes the guy back to the hospital. Like, like in theory.
Yeah, I think we give them a lot more credit than they probably deserved, but I think compared to what was going on at DC at the time, I think it was definitely a different way to approach it. So
yeah, we have the benefit of time now, so you can say, well, at least it led to this, so you kind of forget the silliness of its initial origins.
Sure.
Cool. So illustration. How did you go to? Is that where the career took you?
Oh no! What happened is I was getting ready to submit my portfolio and all that stuff to Art Center, which is the big college out here, or the compared to Cal Arts, it was considered the realistic art school. The one that you could definitely get a job when you got out of, as opposed to Cal Arts. Everyone was just like, this, oh gee, we want to go work at Disney, and
Yeah.
So if you wanted to do anything else, you'd go to Art Center. So that's where I was intending to go. And my art teacher at the time came across a advertisement for portfolio submissions. So she thought it would accomplish a couple things. It would give me a professional portfolio review, so I'd have some idea of what people are really looking for and whatnot, and also it might take a little of the wind out of my sails. Because I was every high school has kind of the art guy or whatever, and I was it.
So you're the one that everyone got to draw when they needed someone to draw something, and the one that
I did the illustrations for the yearbook and for the newspaper, and I was the guy who did all that stuff.
I was that one in my school too.
Yeah, sure. But what happened is she turned out to be wrong about both accounts. Is no one gives you a portfolio review when you submit it for a job, which, because she was a freelancer too, I would have thought she'd have known, but I guess she was just hoping. So you don't submit a portfolio and then telling you, critiquing it. They just either you get the job or you don't get the job.
No, yeah, they don't normally stop, and it's like if you apply for a job, they don't hire you. They usually don't sit you down and tell you why they don't hire you.
Right, exactly. And also I got the job, so that didn't help to take any wind out of my sails. In fact, then the school spent a lot of time helping me finish off my senior year through adult education.
No,
and
they got you out of school.
Yeah. They made I still graduated on the graduation day, but they made sure that I could work a full-time job and still graduate and stuff. Because I think when I told them how much they were offering me, they kind of realized I was making more money than they were at that point. So
that must be a sobering fact for an instructor to learn.
I assume that most of them probably understand that fact, but the fact that he was some high school kid that's going to make more probably thrilled, but still. Could
you see that at that age, that like maybe there was a level of like resentment from the faculty?
Well, there wasn't any resentment. They were actually thrilled to death, I think, because it's a success story, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, they were very happy, I think, for it. But maybe in retrospect, she might have been a little annoyed because both of her plans didn't bear fruit. But still,
maybe so.
But either way, but no, they were very happy that it's like, oh, good. There's one kid that we don't even have to worry about college for anymore. And plus, the plan is to work on this job until it was done, and then kind of go back and then start college. Mm-hmm. But that never happened. So,
no, why would it need to? He had a career.
Well. Yeah, well, in theory, I mean, this was supposed to be like not a summer job, but a intern type job or whatever. But it turned out to be more than that. So.
Was that with Bakshi Studios, or was that before that?
Yeah, no, that was Bakshi on Lord of the Rings.
Wow. So, I was going to say, of all the first jobs to get at the get-go, I mean, at that point, Bakshi was established as being like, because that's post Fritz the Cat and that sort of stuff, right?
Oh yeah. It was probably like his fourth or fifth film, maybe something like. It was after Wizards and Heavy Traffic and Coonskin, and and Fritz the Cat, obviously.
I got to go back and watch Wizards. It's been a very long time.
Yeah.
Wow. So were you like, I mean, were you aware of who he was and sort of?
Yeah, well, actually, because I think, I don't know when the time frame was, but I know before that I had taken a girlfriend to go see Wizards, and that really kind of like, oh, this is different. So that was the first time I actually thought, well, this might be worth actually thinking about at least. But up until then, I had no interest in doing stuff like Fox and the Hound and crap like that. That was not where I was going. I was a big Frazetta fan and illustration fan and stuff.
Yeah.
So Disney stuff had no interest for me. But so yeah, I did know who he was, and I'd heard all this news when Fritz the Cat came out and all that. I mean, I'd say I don't know that I heard much about the films between Fritz the Cat and Wizards, frankly, because they kind of flew a lot under the radar.
They're not mentioned very often. They don't come up very often at all when talking about his sort of oeuvre. But wow. So what, like, because at this point you just had a portfolio of illustration, like you didn't have experience being an animator, did you?
No, I had no.
Okay.
I didn't even know what the job entailed per se.
Wow.
No, but the luck for me at the time was the fact that he was just hiring anyone that could somewhat draw realistically or whatever, because he needed a horde of people to work on that film. And so I got in, and a lot of other people that are still in the industry, or were, I don't know if they are necessarily now, but stayed in the industry for decades and stuff, started on that film. So because he just, if you're familiar with the film.
Oh yes, very much so.
Yeah, so all that stuff with the orcs and stuff, he needed people to kind of go in and draw in fangs and eyes and that type of stuff on top of what we were calling photo roto and stuff. And so he just needed a lot of people, and I just happened to be lucky enough to get through stuff when when an animator upstairs needed an in-betweener. So they brought me upstairs to learn how to in-between. So I started there, I started in-betweening, and then they, Ralph saw that I had sort of a understanding of what I was looking at least. And he gave me a 100-foot scene of Aragorn and Gandalf riding horses across the landscape. So that was my first animated scene, and it was an immense one, and I just kind of didn't know what the hell I was doing. I just did it one drawing after another, which, due to what it was, it probably would have had to be done that way anyways, even if I'd known what I was doing. But and I eventually worked up to getting a screen credit as an animator on the film. So
amazing. So was that just like chaos? Like, were they filming? Because with the rotoscope sort of technology, they sort of would animate over a film, like they would film people doing it, live action.
Sure, right.
So like, was there just like a section of people acting out these scenes and recording, and then going to the animators? Like, is it just chaos all the time in that sort of studio setting?
Well, no. I mean, they were recording somewhere else. They had a sound stage they were recording on and whatnot. No, we did not interact with any of the actors or anything. And also, the way he did it is he recorded the voice actors first, and then he played it back as the rotoscope live action actors would mimic and act to the voiceover and stuff.
Okay.
So
interesting.
They could. Yeah. So it was a very methodical production. And, he's not the first one that's done it, obviously.
No.
It's been done at Disney and Fleischer and everywhere else prior to that.
But I think you would say he's probably the one that comes to mind when it comes up. Like, when you hear rotoscope, he's what I think. Because
he was the one who acknowledged it.
I see.
When he, because he thought it was, look at how wonderful this is. He did articles and interviews and discussing it in newspaper articles and stuff. And Disney the animators at Disney got furious.
Oh, he's the magician. Yeah, magician revealing the trick.
Exactly. So they were furious about it. And now, it doesn't take much nowadays with the internet to Google around and find, oh, look, they did the same thing. They just pretended they didn't.
Yeah. No, well, I'm glad that Bakshi sort of was proud of it and shined a light on it. It's impressive. Like, it's super impressive. And I really feel like it adds a level of, like, there's movements that people make, when walking naturally, that I feel like with most animation, everything just seems so clean and crisp. But real people don't walk that way, or or there's a little stagger to their step, or there's a little whatever,
Oh, sure.
that's why I felt like I was so taken with it when I first saw it. I think I may have seen American Pop before I saw Lord of the Rings, but
Well, American Pop was even more so in that.
yeah,
I mean, in fact, the story on American Pop is I got in trouble because I wouldn't trace the live action exactly. So they ended up giving me scenes that it was okay not to trace the live action on, like the Jimi Hendrix stuff and other things like that.
really. Why did you draw that line in the sand?
It was just, by that point, it wasn't my first film, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
It was just something that naturally came out when I was animating, because
I
was
see.
at that point, I was more of an animator than most of the other people working on it that were just exactly tracing the live action. And that was the look he wanted for the most part, and definitely his art director wanted. And so I kept getting in trouble anytime I'd do something outside of that. So
Really, I'd be surprised that they were so meticulous to even get to that point to
Yeah,
know,
but-
right? Like you'd have to be, yeah, wow.
yeah, it was okay. I mean, it worked out fine for me because I ended up doing stuff like that Jimi Hendrix scene.
That sequence is super cool. The Joplin one too, like any of that music stuff is
Yeah.
super neat.
Yeah.
I caught that. I think as a kid, it was probably animated, so I just thought it was a cartoon, and I must have rented it from the local store. And I remember like really digging it, even though I was far too young to really understand it. Although I actually recently found the soundtrack at I Collect Records in vinyl at a record store a while ago, so I was very happy to catch it. But the scene specifically with the war scene where the guy stops and plays the piano and the German, that scene still lives rent free in my head. I think about it every once in a while how good that part was. I actually really think I'm overdue to go back and rewatch it. I'm gonna have to.
I think that was actually not his best film, but I think it was up there at the top. And
as far as
Heavy Traffic was probably his best film.
Really,
in my opinion, yeah, because it was very personal to him, and it actually had more to say in a lot of ways.
I guess most of my experiences are like fantasy films, right? Or like, so that one was obviously grounded in reality. He's following a family and music in the sort of through America through the years. So
yeah.
And then he went back to Fire and Ice, which he worked on as well, which is like you must have been in heaven because I was like a Frazetta painting come to life.
Oh, well, I'm thrilled. I mean, here I am, I think it was like 21 or something, and here I get a chance to work with Frank Frazetta, on a film with his name on it and stuff. So it was quite exciting.
What was he like?
He's an interesting character. I mean, definitely very Bronx, East Coast type of guy.
Oh, really?
And stuff, but there were ups and downs to him. But overall, I mean, especially in retrospect over the years, it's definitely, I'm glad I had that opportunity. So
yeah,
I mean, he was. He spent more time with the background painters because that was key to getting that look.
But right, I guess so.
I worked a lot with him on, initially working up the characters and getting the designs and stuff working. But at a certain point, he felt that was in good shape and he didn't need to spend much time on it. Tigua took a lot longer to deal with, but overall. I had enough meetings with him and met. He wasn't in the office all that often, but when he was, he usually spent the time with the artists working on Tigua and the background guys. I don't know if you know or know who they are. James Gurney,
no.
Dinotopia.
Oh yes, yeah, I'm familiar with that. Yeah,
yeah, and Thomas Kincaid, the painter of light.
Right. Okay, yes, Kincaid, yes.
They were the only two painters on that film.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, they just cranked out. I mean, they were both just out of school, I think, and just really got their shit together pretty quick. And Frank taught them a lot of tricks and whatnot. And
cool.
James took to it a lot better, I think, in general.
Yeah,
Kincaid did, but
beautiful work.
So, yeah.
I usually always ask people having the show how they're like, especially if they have a career in the arts, how their parents felt about it. But being that you literally just jumped into a career, a pretty good one, I imagine they probably didn't have a lot of objections.
No, they were pretty thrilled.
I
think overall, because they knew I wanted to get into art, but they had no idea what it could be. But the minute I started doing this job with Bakshi, they thought, oh, okay, that seems like a real job.
He's good. Yeah, we don't have to worry about this one. Yeah.
Yep.
Were they art types themselves?
No, my dad said that he used to draw a little bit when he was a kid and stuff, but it was frowned upon back in the day because that was, not what you should be doing. He worked with his family was butchers.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They worked, in fact, I don't know how familiar you are with St. John, but they
New Brunswick, pretty straightforward. Yeah.
Okay, they used to
I've been there.
And maybe they still do. They used to have like this kind of mall type area where there's all types of restaurants and butcher shops and other shops, all stuck together in kind of like what we would call a mall these days, I guess. And they had the Gordon and Sons, or Gordon Brothers, I think it was, butcher shop for a long time there. So.
Yeah, the specialty butcher shops aren't quite as common around here as they used to be. I think the big supermarkets tend to have pushed. I feel like in bigger cities you may get more of that, but not so much out where we are. But very cool. Well, I have to ask you about. I don't want to just ask you about every project you worked on because that'll take a million years. But the Black Cauldron was is probably my favorite Disney movie. It's one I've always really, really liked. And obviously you mentioned you had sort of not a love for Disney or just sort of indifference, but what drew you into that world? Was it just a job or?
Well, initially, at that point I'd finished Fire and Ice and I'd been, looking for my next job. And I think I got hired working for a vendor or subcontractor they were doing Winnie the Pooh and the Blustery Day or Day for Eeyore. I think so I was hired to do that. Work on that. I think I was on it for about a week or so, and then I got a call from Disney because they had my portfolio, and I guess at that point they were looking for people that could do that type of look. They had Mike Ploog designing characters and stuff, and so I think they saw that there's a match, and I've obviously worked with Mike Ploog before on Lord of the Rings and stuff, and they felt that I could probably do that, so they hired me. So I quit that job with the blessings of the studio that I was working with. Said, no, of course, go. And I started working at Disney. Went right off the street as an animator, which they didn't do much of in those days.
Well,
so it was nice to, go into Disney and actually, get a desk and everything else and start off, get an assistant, which I'd never had before. So it was kind of nice. So.
Did you have any sense of like when working on it, how different it was from everything else Disney had done?
Oh yeah, because especially having been at Bakshi, we always kind of make fun of the Disney films of that day. There was Fox and the Hound, and there was Aristocats, and it was like Disney was not going in that direction whatsoever. In fact, they were getting softer and softer.
Yes,
as they went along. They'd really lost their way since Jungle Book in a lot of ways. Or since Walt died, I guess, they really had no idea. The fact that now that they're going to try some epic storytelling, in the vein of a Star Wars, where they've actually got a character arc, and you got. It wasn't successful completely in that way, but that's what it was supposed to be. Here's a movie about a kid who wants to go off and fight in a war, and he has to discover that fighting in the war is an awful idea and people get hurt and whatnot. It didn't quite successfully pull off that. But still, that was the intent.
Well, the imagery alone, like the Horned King is probably one of the most disturbing villains to ever get created by Disney film, who to me is like one of the visually and just in practice, one of the coolest designed villains. And plus like all the
hurt during the voices.
Yes, and the skeletons when they all get reanimated and all that stuff. It's pretty dark stuff.
Oh, yeah,
from what I understand, between that and was it the Black Hole, the live action movie they made that didn't do very well either? That I guess Disney was in a rough spot after those two films came out.
Well, the problem is Disney was in a rough spot. Period.
That's true. They wanted these to save them. Yeah, they did.
Prior to that, at that point, there was a pirate takeover happening. Where people were trying to take it over, and then last ditch effort, Roy got hold of Eisner and Katzenberg and Wells, and they basically came in to save the day. So that was before Black Cauldron was even finished. So it was all the stuff that led up to that kind of was killing Disney pretty badly. The Black Hole, and there was some film that they tried about some family that was escaping from Germany or something in a balloon or something.
I guess that was sort of a golden era of those live action Disney movies.
Yeah, and they did somewhere something wicked this really comes, and great idea for a film, but because it was Disney, they couldn't pull it together as
it's a pretty dark story. Like it's one of Ray Bradbury's more interesting ones, and it's like why?
And they Disneyfied it too much, and I mean, to a large degree, that's what happened with the Black Cauldron too. It was a very Disneyfied version of it, and plus, I think they didn't. In those days, people didn't quite grasp the whole hero's journey thing. I mean, it was just starting to kind of get a foothold with Star Wars and stuff, but
they weren't expecting it from Disney.
Oh, definitely. And the people making the films hadn't discussed it and realized it and recognized it. It wasn't until after the fact that Star Wars people started trying to analyze it and realize, this is why it works. Not because it's a well-made film or anything. It's because it's got that narrative that is a sure bet narrative. Now, if we'd known that when we were working on Black Cauldron, and that was never discussed when we were on Black Cauldron. But so basically, they were just swinging around and hoping that they hit the mark at some point. And they did often on the film. I mean, I think the chasing the pig sequence is still one of the best sequences that I think that Disney's ever made, then or now. But
even like I always said, I think there's a few Disney films that I always herald as favorites. I mean, of the newer generation, Aladdin as a kid was one I loved, but going back, I always thought The Sword and the Stone and The Black Cauldron were two of my favorites, because they have something to say. Even the Gertie character, who's like fairly annoying, the sacrifice that he makes at the end is actually pretty heartbreaking. They actually like that's stuff that in kids movies you didn't see at that time, and I really appreciate it for that. I was obviously saw it a little later. Well, I guess when did it come out? 85. I was born in 85, the same year it came out, so I would have probably caught it maybe 5-6 years later, but it had an effect.
You were lucky to be able to catch it because Disney hid it for a long time.
Well, actually, when I got Disney Plus, when they opened it up, that was the very first thing I watched was that movie, because I was so happy to be able to watch it again, because it's not an easy one to track down. Back in the day, before we had everything at the touch of a button. Now,
I mean, it was the last. I think, if not the last film, one of the last films they released on videotape.
Right.
And a lot of people were still outraged. How dare they call it a classic? It's like, well, because that's marketing is calling it a classic.
Yes, before it goes back in the vault for another 20 years. Because how long that lasted. Cool. So what was going on in your life at this time? Like, were you married, or were you getting...
I got married during Fire and Ice. And I had a son. I think by the time I was on Cauldron, I probably had 2 kids and stuff, and things were great. Seemed like I was actually had a career and stuff, and here I am at Disney, and it's kind of nice. I didn't stay there. I stupidly didn't stay, but I should have.
What caused you to leave?
Well, at that point, a lot of people were going, this is not going to last, because Frank Wells was talking about shutting it down.
Oh, really? Okay.
Because he had said that he's the money guy, kind of the financial guy at the 3, and he had looked at the numbers. I think Dalmatians had come out after Cauldron, a reissue of Dalmatians, and it made as much money as Cauldron. And he said, "What are we making new films for? And that seems like a waste of money. Let's just re-release the old films." And then it wasn't until Jeffrey realized that he could make films with Little Mermaid and stuff that via proxy. I think he could be an actual filmmaker. Before then, he was just a wheeler and dealer, behind the scenes guy. But here he was on Little Mermaid, actually able to step into the mix of it and stuff, and actually get involved and have meetings about it and go do more than just be the guy in the back room.
Mm.
So that it started to take hold. Plus, Little Mermaid showed decent box office for the day.
Mm.
So it wasn't until then that they realized it's like, oh, well, let's give it more time and see what happens, because Oliver didn't do it really. Oliver was a bad idea that never really took off. But it was better than the idea that Eisner wanted to do. He wanted to do what was it? Doofus, the police dog. He had no idea what a film was, an animated film. So if you just make it about a dog, make it a police dog, So the fact that they talked him into doing Oliver Twist with animals was a step up. Not much of a step up, but it was a step up still. But
yeah, it's almost like several of those sort of original, in quotes, Disney stories are generally just, classic still, like The Lion King is Hamlet, like it's just, it's a matter of not drawing attention to it, but sort of taking
inspiration
inspiration from it.
When done right, yes.
Yes, exactly.
In the case of Oliver and Company, it's just like, okay, this is just really, there's no pretense about it not being Oliver Twist.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Whereas at least in Lion King, it was like, if you're smart, you catch that it's Hamlet.
Yes. It's like, well, they're lions at least. So,
Yeah. And plus, they don't do the ghost. They don't do they don't do the suicidal speech or anything.
Yeah, they give you the happy ending. You do get the ghost in the clouds very briefly.
Yeah, well,
sure. Yeah, but in its own roundabout way. I know,
but not the same way that Hamlet is played out.
No, for no.
And you don't have the mother sleeping with the uncle.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel like it's implied, but it's not said. So I don't know.
It's not a plot point like it is.
Yeah, exactly. No, 100%. There's no ear poison, so there's
right,
that.
Exactly. And no Claudius getting stabbed behind a curtain or
right. Yeah. You kind of think about how ridiculous some of that stuff is if you just spout it, if you're not watching it in the context of a play.
Yeah.
Cool. So this is when you're doing some of the independent stuff, I see.
Well, yeah. At that point, I started to do drift back into doing some freelance and whatever. And the reason why I left Disney is because it looked like bad times. And I had outside sources. I didn't have to stay there. So I was looking around, and a lot of the people that were my peer group, like Anastasia and Phil Nibelink and people like that, they took off for London to work on Roger Rabbit, because they didn't think it was a good place to be either at that point. They thought it was just like, this is dying here, so at least let's go to London and work on that. Whereas I didn't really have that option because, I've got a family and whatnot. They were a couple of single guys, so much easier for them to jump up and go than it was for me.
So, but Rabbit was a Disney film too, right?
Technically, but it was a Spielberg.
Amblin. Okay,
Universal film.
Yeah,
it was being done with Disney money, but it was more, they didn't look at it as a Disney Pictures film.
It's funny how it's so embraced now. Like, you go to Disney World, there's just Roger Rabbit shit everywhere.
Well, if it had been a bomb, they would have blamed Spielberg and said, no, we had nothing to do with that.
I often, when people ask me my favorite movie, I mean, I have a lot of answers, but often I say Who Framed Roger Rabbit. To me, it's a little bit of everything. It's kind of a perfect mix of movie in that you get, animation, you get live action, you get to period piece. It's a mystery. It's scary at times. Judge Doom's one of the scariest villains of all time, I thought, as a kid. There's a lot of stuff, romance, a little bit, humor. Like, it's great. Mm-hmm. So I see you worked on Cool World, which is sort of like the I would call like the stepsister, the stepbrother.
The ugly stepsister. I was a key animator on Holly and Lynette on that thing. Mm-hmm. But that was something I did from home.
Really?
While I was doing other work at the time.
So they just send you the things to animate over, like the scenes?
Yeah, I'd get, either they'd ship it to me or I'd usually go in once or twice a week or something. I was living in the mountains at that point, which was about an hour and a half away. And I'd go in and pick up stuff and deliver it and whatnot. And I had a whole setup where I could shoot my own scenes and look at them and figure out how to fix them and whatnot. So, yeah.
Very
You
cool.
know,
And what was
because
that like to work on, I guess?
well, I mean, for me, it was great because I got to animate Holly and Lynette, so that was fun. And I didn't have to deal with being in the studio and dealing with any of the mushigas there and everything. So,
Yeah, I suppose being autonomous on your own must have been quite a rewarding experience.
yeah. And I've been doing that for quite a few years because I've moved up that far away on that for that reason. So I could work at home and whatnot, be with the kids and whatnot and stuff during the day.
And I suppose once you have enough credits under your belt, there you've established yourself as
Yeah,
your work speaks for itself at this point.
Well, at that point too, there's a much smaller industry, so there are a lot less possible
Right.
people to hire. So not to degrade myself, but I was kind of the go-to rotoscope dance person and stuff at that point.
Oh, really? That's kind of the niche you fell into.
Yeah, I mean, I did the gem intro, and I did a lot of other stuff. On Fire, not Fire and Ice, on American Pop, I did a lot of the dancing stuff and whatnot. So.
That's funny you mentioned that because I was just looking, I'm skimming through your credits as we go here, and Anastasia, I remember, had a pretty interesting dance scene in it, if I recall correctly.
That I did not work on.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
No. At that point, I was just I forget how that job even came about, but that I was they were all in Arizona at that point, the blues people working on it, but for some reason they wanted to hire me to do some work because of the rotoscope aspect of it. And so I probably only did maybe about 100 feet or so of it, but none of it was dancing. But so I got a credit on the film, so I got in. But it's not a film that I was heavily involved in. So
No, okay, cool. Well, yeah, so I noticed you did, and I'm asking just because of it's who to me, but some of these like the Book of Mormon animated thing and the Bible thing, though I assume those are just work for hire things, but
well, yeah, I mean, the person who did that was one of the directors of Black Cauldron.
Oh, really?
Rich. Yeah, he'd started when they fired him from Disney. He started his own animation studio and started doing those things to kind of bring money in and whatnot. And first I started freelancing, doing some of it while I was at, I think, Disney at the time or something. And then eventually he gave me a full-time job doing that. So I did that for years and years, doing those directed videos and stuff. And then eventually from that, the whole goal was to do a feature. And eventually from that, he moved into Swan Princess. So it was the same, he was ramping up for the feature on that. So.
Oh, okay, I see. Yeah. I guess that's an interesting question because I guess once the home video market became a thing, was that like a big opening for animators all around? Like it's not just about there's suddenly new avenues and places to go that weren't there before.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of extra projects that were being done that normally wouldn't have, like those types of things. And I think Hanna-Barbera was doing some directed videos and stuff too, but they were also getting dual use out of them by putting them on channels and stuff and whatnot. So yeah, it was all very fledgling at that point, early days as far as home video. I mean, when I was at Disney, they just released Pinocchio on VHS or whatever for $80 or something.
Yeah, there's an interesting documentary on Netflix or something about, I think it was about Blockbuster, and they're explaining about how that industry began because to buy a movie was like Batman. Tim Burton's Batman was like $90 or something.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And at that time, I remember Jeffrey saying, "Don't worry, people will throw this away and they'll buy it again when we reissue it later." And we all thought, "You're nuts. That's $80. That's a lot of money. Maybe $80 is nothing for you, but for us."
Yeah, for
people
sure.
working in the studio thought $80. I mean, we were only getting like $600 a week, if that.
Yeah.
So, $80, like, no one's going to throw this away. This is a treasured family.
Yeah, you have to love, this is getting passed down to generation and generation.
Yeah. As it turns out, he was right.
Yeah.
That people would get rid of them. And as it turns out, we were right too, because anyone who's got those original videotapes now, I guess they sell for a fortune.
That's what they say. I'm curious about how much they really do. But I guess if you have that's true. Cool. So I noticed some character design stuff. So that's mostly just coming out, like you weren't animating specifically, but just designing some of the people in the films, like in Batman Sub-Zero, the Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, I was didn't so much do the character designs as I took them and kind of pushed them.
Okay.
They were the Bruce Timm stuff that I took and I pushed them, and I did expression sheets and whatnot. At the same time, I was doing storyboards and that type of stuff on them, because the producer of that film and director was Boyd Kirkland, who I'd known for years, who used to have a place out in Salt Lake doing layouts for like DePatie Freeling and places like that, Ruby Spears. And he moved out here, and to kind of learn more of what was going on, he came to work with us on some of those director videos, the Bible videos and whatnot. So he worked for a while. So I worked with him and taught him a lot of stuff. And then, so he'd hire me on other jobs and whatnot. So
cool. So what was 8 Crazy Nights like?
Well,
did they film that and then you did the rotoscope stuff?
No, there was no rotoscope on that I'm aware.
Really?
That was all.
I guess that's the nature of the work, because I always kind of felt like it somewhat was, because it had to feel like it was.
Well, they had a lot of really good, strong animators on that, and they were hiring specifically for people that could do that type of stuff. Like myself, and there were several others that I know that fell into that very easily, that could do it. I enjoyed doing the animation, but at a certain point, that was kind of on a break from X-Men Evolution that I took that job. And plus, it was horrendous trying to get to that studio. That was you're not familiar with the area, but
not at all.
Culver City,
where
the studio was, it's just impossible to get to from anywhere. So that was never fun. And so the minute that X-Men Evolution started back up, I ran back to that. So, but then I continued doing animation as a freelance job on that film. So doing that at home at nights and stuff. So,
well, you worked. Evolution's probably the longest singular job you had. Would it have been? Because it was 52 episodes.
Well, yeah, but once again, I was only on staff for 2 seasons.
Okay.
Technically, and then the seasons 3 and 4, I worked from home doing the character designs. The first 2 seasons, I was the director and character designer, and 3 and 4, I was just a character designer working from home, because I was doing I don't know what other job I was doing at the time, but it was something that I think at that point I was at DreamWorks. On Shrek 2, I think.
Right. What was the DreamWorks experience like?
Yeah, that was good. I enjoyed that a lot of the time, as much as you can. But what's nice about working, this is the first big studio I've worked. I worked in story, and it was great having story meetings. That's kind of the big thing at studios, is you get to actually shape and work the story as a story artist and stuff. You have a script, but the script is usually like, okay, this is a good jumping off point. And then you just spend a lot of time working on the story, and you'd have meetings and try to figure out what's working, what's not working, where can it go from here. And I mean, the old joke is, at a certain point in every DreamWorks meeting, and probably Disney meetings, like, who's this film about? Anyways, who's the main character? Especially with the Shrek 2, because the first film was his, obviously. He was the main character. And then, of course, the thinking is, should the second one be about him too? Maybe it should be about Fiona or Donkey, or maybe it's something else. Maybe it's not about him. As it turned out, that they finally figured out, no, it has to be about him too, just a different aspect of his growth.
Yeah, and throw in a new character or two. That's
sure. And say, okay, now this is his new arc. The first one was the arc about him having to learn that he did want to be around people, and the second one's like, now he has to get used to the idea that he's now a married man, and and all that stuff. So
actually, those movies are great. They're even as time marches on, if I catch one on a TV on cable in a hotel or something, and you let it run, and there's quite a lot of clever stuff in there. And I'm always a fan of stuff that's centered towards kids, but incorporates things that adults can enjoy and interpret.
Well, I mean, the whole Farquhar
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah. Well, that
it's-
apparently was like a whole because there was like somebody who worked for the studio that like either turned down or that the animators didn't like, and they based it all on him. Like he even looks like him.
it was a joke on Jeffrey. Jeffrey is a
Yes,
very short
that's what it
guy.
was. Right.
Yes.
But even the
And,
design of his face kind of looks like him, does it not?
yeah, it was basically a mean caricature of Jeffrey. Oh, in the entire thing. And what's, I guess, nice is Jeffrey never got it.
Really?
He didn't recognize it as such. At least that's what I heard. Like I said, I only came on during Shrek 2, so
Yeah,
this is
Farquaad
just
was
all
good.
what I'd heard after the part. But even his name, a lot of people never got. It's like, you do realize what that name is, right?
It's just punctuated enough that a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, a kid probably would know what fuckwad is, but Farquaad is said fast enough can certainly meld into it.
Oh yeah.
So did you work with Stan Lee on Stripperella, or is that
Not on that particular show. I worked for someone else, the producer on that. And that came in on the second season on that because they weren't happy at all. Pam Anderson wasn't happy at all with the designs or anything like that, from what I gather.
Oh, really?
They wanted me to come in and try to redesign her and make it look more like her. And I worked a little bit with Olivia. I don't know if you know who that painter is.
Oh, yeah.
She does a lot of fantasy. She does a lot of Betty Page stuff nowadays and whatever. And she was kind of big friends or neighbors with Pam Anderson or something at the time. And so she'd do stuff and I'd do stuff back. And,
Olivia de Berardinitis.
That could be. I just know her as
Yeah.
Olivia. So,
Yeah, right on.
That's her professional
Yep.
name. So I worked on that for a while, and then, but I did get to work with Stan Lee much later on the Condor.
Right.
So,
yes.
yeah, and that would do story meetings, go back and forth and whatnot and stuff. And
I was always curious about those because, like, he did a few of those, right? Like those.
there were two of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I was curious about how involved he was. It sounds like he really was involved quite a bit.
Yeah, he was pretty involved in Orchard. He didn't write them. He kind of did the story pitch that he would then give to. I think Condor was written by Marv Wolfman, and I think the other one that came out, Mosaic or whatever.
Yeah, it was Mosaic. Yeah.
Yeah, that was written by Len Wein.
Oh wow! Really cool.
Yeah, I think that one was not mine, so I was not involved in that one as much. But definitely the Condor, yeah, we'd go back and forth. And then I was, starting at the end, there were supposed to be 3 or 4 more. So we were starting to develop them and stuff. So we'd go back and forth with Stan. And at one point we had one of them was going to be with Ringo Starr and stuff. He was going to be a secret agent or something. So we were trying to develop what that was. And, we're sitting on the phone with his agent and stuff and talking back and forth and see what he would or wouldn't do or be happy with and stuff and whatnot. So, that was kind of a cool time. Unfortunately, what happened is I think the people doing it, the studio, Film Roman at the time, got upset because Stan was also putting together packages for other studios and they thought they had him exclusively.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So they got mad and canceled the whole shebang after that, after the first 2 got done. So,
wow. So as an engaged person, like just as a person, he's such a legend, really, in the industry. Like he was pretty personable and easy to get along with.
Oh yeah, I mean he definitely made you feel like you were important, and he knew you, and he was definitely charismatic in that way, where you were the most important man in the room when he was talking to you. So, and plus, what was nice is he didn't. When you were just talking to him back and forth, he wasn't Stan Lee, the guy you see saw on TV putting it on and a little over the top or a lot over the top. And he's more Stanley Lieber at that point and actually talking like a normal person, going back and forth with ideas and stuff.
I met him very briefly at a con years ago, and it was this thing where you could like go to a dinner and then get a picture with him. But it was kind of a gong show because like the second he arrived, there was like a sea of people just standing there staring at him, waiting for him to finish his food so they could go get their picture with him. And it was like security's like mobbing people back, and so I just got a quick photo. I had a copy of the Silver Surfer book he did with Mobius that I wanted to get him to sign, but I didn't even get him to sign it. It was such a gong show, but it was just nice and cool. He did seem for like the second I talked to him like a very nice, personable dude.
Yeah, I mean, it sure was. I mean, despite which side of the fence you're on that whole Kirby Lee thing or whatever, it's like he's an important person and he's iconic. And
I still think it's the peanut butter, you got my peanut butter and your chocolate kind of thing.
Yeah, well, I do. I think it's the McCartney-Lennon things. Like,
I mean,
okay on their own, but boy, together that they nailed it.
Yeah, I mean, you could look at Kirby's New Gods and see what Kirby Untethered looks like without somebody else is there adding stuff to it. And it's good stuff. It's interesting. It's unique, but it misses a certain pizzazz you don't get from the stuff that Stan Lee was doing. And whether it's like whether Kirby drew everything and then Stan Lee put in the dialogue later, whatever the alchemy was, it made something great. So,
But also, I mean, on top of it, I think, he was the greatest publicist for comics in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And also, he's the one who first brought the names of the artists to the public's attention.
That's true.
I mean, up until he started calling Jack King Kirby, he didn't get credit. A lot of times these artists never even got their names attached to the book stuff. So
yeah, it's funny because there's such a contentious relationship with a lot of them. Like, I read the Abraham Riesling book they put out, True Believer, a few years ago about him, and it's interesting. It kind of posits a lot that he's just more of a carnival barker for comics than a real contributor. But like beyond all of that sort of stuff, there's just so many things where you're like Ditko had a contentious relationship with him, and like Kirby did, and a few other people. But it makes you wonder, like, if it's more like, I guess what I'm trying to say is that when you have a partnership with someone and maybe that someone goes on to shine brighter than you feel like you're being shined, there's a level of, I can see resentment that comes from that.
Oh, sure. And everyone thinks that they're the biggest contributor to whatever they're working.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, you saw the same thing, like I said, with Lennon and McCartney. They don't often fight about who really did or didn't do what and stuff. But but the point is that it wasn't that black and white. I mean, the people who want to say that Jack did everything and Kirby, Stan just came in and wrote some stupid dialogue. He's just like, well, no, it's not that black and white. Come on.
Yeah.
And if anything, that demeans the relationships that lasted longer and who liked to work with Stan, like Buscema and Romita and stuff. But you're calling them assholes and idiots then because they didn't recognize the fact that he was that horrible a person,
Yeah, they all have nothing but nice things to say. So it's also kind of you glamorize, like, that book alone sort of puts in the forefront that sort of time period, because you forget that, like, back in, like, almost everybody who draws comics now that I've talked to or works in illustration is some kind of a nerd, right? Like, you're kind of a nerdy guy, you're into it, like, you're into fantasy, you're into whatever. That's what brought you to the table to find the things that you want to eventually draw or be a part of. But like back in the day, like, Kirby just seems like it's a job. He didn't seem, he didn't, like, you got the little things in the arms, you're wearing a suit and a tie every day, drawing at your desk, and they're just telling these stories about, like, Kirby just grumbling and trying to get something done by his deadline, and like Stan Lee's like playing a flute in his office. Like, it just sounds like ridiculous stuff. That was kind of funny.
I mean, none of them thought that it was going to mean anything. That's why Stan used a pseudonym.
Yeah.
I don't know that that's why Jack did. I think Jack mainly did it for to avoid anti-Semitism, but a lot of them did. But still, it's just none of them thought they was going to amount to anything. Certainly not what they've amounted to now. No one could
billion-dollar movies and all this sort of stuff.
No, not on this level. I mean, I think they were probably happy with that really crappy stuff that that awful Captain America thing with the guy with the helmet on. So they probably like, big time now, boy. Or the
it comes up quite a bit.
They probably thought that was it. Imagine what's happening now. They would never have been able to see that coming.
Yeah, I often talk about that. Like, even as a comic nerd, like, if you'd have told me 20 years ago I'd see Thanos in a movie, and he'd be the main villain in a bunch of movies. He's like my favorite villain all time as a kid. So like, I'd see Rocket Raccoon, I'd see Werewolf by Night, Moon Knight, like just it's crazy. I never would have believed you in a million years. And now they're making billions of dollars.
And the merchandise that's available.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe more so when you were a kid, but when I was a kid, forget it.
Yeah.
You'd never see anything like this.
Yeah.
The stuff that you've got sitting around, you'd never find.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. A lot of my toys as a kid were like ones that were like from the Spider-Man cartoon or the X-Men cartoon.
Sure. Yeah.
So I guess being that X-Men was kind of a pivotal thing for you somewhat, you worked on Wolverine and the X-Men as well as X-Men Evolution.
Mm-hmm.
And, my co-host Davin, who set up this interview, thank you, Davin, from our other podcast, has mentioned that you were heavily involved with those things as well. So do you have something going back that's like, I guess, your proudest accomplishment if you had to pick a thing like that?
Well, I think the things that I'm best known for are the things I'm also coincidentally proudest of, the X-Men Evolution, because I think from what I gather and I hear often enough is that brought a bigger audience to the conventions and stuff and to the comic world than wasn't there before. There's you can almost see, especially with San Diego Comic-Con, where up until a certain point there's this like mostly, as you were saying, nerdy guys, maybe a few women, and then X-Men Evolution kind of opened that up a lot in a lot of ways. I meet constantly young women who tell me that they got into comics because of X-Men Evolution. And
that's awesome.
We told a story. We leaned heavily on the female protagonists and stuff. So,
that's huge.
Yeah, and the fact that when it was first out, it was following Pokemon, which was the biggest effing show on the kids' WB at the time.
Oh yeah.
And we started to beat that.
No, wow.
It took after about a year, we started to beat that, and so they were thrilled to death with it. And the reason why we were beating, or why we were matching it and beating it, is because we kept the female audience, the young girl audience. Because up until then, after Pokemon, they'd sign out. They wouldn't continue watching whatever else the kids WB. It wasn't, they weren't that interested in whatever used to be in our spot. So, and we kept them there. So they were thrilled to death, and that was what made the big difference on our show.
Awesome.
And the other thing that I'm proudest of is Swan Princess, because that has a humongous fan base too. That's in fact, they just finally released the final episode or the final movie in a 12 series arc.
Oh, really?
That series, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Direct to video, but Sony put out. After the first film, they did 11 more sequels. So,
yeah, I guess that was quite a long. It's one of those animation, like it's that one and was it The Land Before Time? It's had like 15, sequel years of time, but you kind of forget about how many of them there actually are.
Yeah. There were 12, in which I guess the grandstanding that they can do for Swan Princess is the longest running independent series of features,
which is very impressive.
Before Time was Universal, so that wasn't independent, obviously. So,
but that's even more impressive, especially with the amount of big studio output happening all the time. I guess the last thing I'll hook you on is Space Jam, the new one. Was that mostly the ending sequence, like when they had the people becoming cartoon characters?
No. Actually, we did most of that was, I don't know who did that, but we were working on all the stuff when he was searching.
Oh, the classic animation stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
I did a lot of I did a couple scenes from the Speedy and the Matrix sequence.
Oh, right.
A couple scenes from that. And then I did a lot of the stuff animating LeBron when he was running around town with bugs and stuff.
Right.
Where they were driving and trying to locate people and stuff. So, but yeah, no, that was fun stuff. It was fun to be able to do animation again. I hadn't done animation in decades. So that was good, and also had to learn to do it digitally, which is different, with digital software.
Mhm.
And also, do the Looney Tunes characters. I've never animated the Looney Tune characters, so.
Well, you worked on Tiny Toons, didn't you? Was that?
Well, but as a storyboard artist,
Ah, I see. Okay.
which is a little bit different. Yeah, so it's a little bit different aspect. I mean, not that I can't draw them.
Yeah.
I'm not the best artist in the world of Looney Tunes, but there's some guys who are just like, shit, that's beautiful. But I could draw them all enough, but to animate them is a little bit different than to do storyboard them. So.
Very cool. And I guess my final question, I guess I said my last one was about directing an animation. Because like you've directed like that Avengers, the Ultimate Avengers film, and a few other episodes of the Earth's Mightiest Heroes and Wolverine X-Men episodes you mentioned for a couple seasons. Like, I guess when it comes to directing an animated film, I fully understand what a director does in theater. I do a lot of theater, so in theater I've been in some movies, so I've been on film sets. So, but like when it comes to the animation styles, and mostly just taking the script and then directing the storyboard artist to kind of get to the point where you do it, or how does
a lot of it is you're directing the storyboard artist, telling them, and you launch them, they bring you back something, you give them notes, they bring back, and then you work on it more and more.
So it's a scene by scene sort of thing.
Yeah, it definitely. You have to kind of fully sculpt it, and basically you're directing cinematographer.
I was going to say, it seems like a lot of jobs at once.
Yeah, you're basically working the acting. You're working with the actors, the animation.
Voice actors,
actor acting. And sometimes with the voice actors. A lot of times you're just given the voice track, but you still have to figure out how they should be behaving during it and stuff and whatnot. So there's a lot of things involved in it.
It's surprising. I figured you get to direct the voice actors too. It seems like that would be a key point of it.
Well,
some depends.
Yeah, it depends. A lot of times that's you don't often have time, and B, too many people in there that want to give their input. So it's easier to kind of like, I'll let them do it, and I'll just change things as I need them, because a lot of times you can call for retakes and stuff after the fact if it's not working and stuff, but it's sometimes easier to let them have their shot at it, and then you can kind of play with it after if you need to. But
awesome.
Like I said, a lot of times it's just not the time in the week to do that too.
Yeah, I guess I'd assume not. Awesome. Well, what's next for you? What do you got coming up?
Well, right now I'm directing on a Disney Junior show called Ariel.
Oh, cool.
Little Mermaid is an 8-year-old kid and her friends and stuff. So
that's fun.
It was very preschool, but also I'm doing some comic stuff. I'm working on a couple of comics. One of them is based on an old pulp novel called Werewolf of Paris. Doing other things, a couple other projects like that, trying to get things going.
Cool.
So,
that's awesome.
And also just come out recently. I animated full-on pencil paper animation on something that's coming out this year called Mushka, which was done by Anastasia, who was one of the big guys at Disney and stuff. He wanted me to do a couple scenes for him and stuff. So that should be out and hopefully maybe get a nomination for best animated short. We'll see. So
yeah, I saw that listed here. I was going to try to track it down, but I was having trouble. And I guess it's because it's not out yet.
Yeah, it's hitting the theaters, the circuit, the award circuit, and that type of stuff right now.
The film festival circuit usually.
Yeah, festival circuit. Yes, thank you. Yes, so that, but I do know that it's going to be up as a possible nominee this year. So.
Oh, that's lovely. It looks adorable. The design of the animation design looks really cool. Yeah,
André is an old friend that I worked with on Black Cauldron. So we got back together and stuff, and I helped him on, only just a handful of scenes, but still, it was fun to do that again.
Beautiful. I look forward to seeing it. It looks awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for joining me, Steven. It's much appreciated.
My pleasure.
I know
Glad we
Davin's.
could finally hook it up.
Yeah, for sure. I know Davin was hoping to get you for whatever our next project is for the X-Men show. So maybe we'll be meeting again in the future.
Sounds good.
Awesome. Thanks again.
Good. My pleasure.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh, if you ever make it up here, let me know.
I will.
I'll
Yeah,
definitely.
I'll reach out to you. Yeah. In the meantime, talk to your friends at cons.
Yes,
fine.
I will. Yeah, that'd be
Sure.
great excuse to get you up here for sure. I know some
Sounds
that happen
good.
in Moncton as well. So that's closer to St. John. So if you ever want to
Okay.
check out that area, we can do that too.
Yeah, one of these days, that's always been kind of the thought, is to go back and check it out and see what. I mean, supposedly my father, his family lived in what used to be, or what is now, the lieutenant governor's house, or something like that.
Oh, really?
Something like that.
Cool.
I guess at one point, because being butcher was a big deal in those days.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
you wanted the good cuts of meat, and you got to treat the butcher right.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Cool. Yeah, I'll reach out to the East Coast Comic Expo for sure. They're in the summer, so
okay,
though I'm sure they'd be happy to have you.
sounds good. All right,
Awesome.
take it
Thanks
easy.
again. See you later. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did with Stephen E. Gordon. As I mentioned before, I am just recording this before I got to take off to go do the play, so going to wrap it up pretty quickly here. Just want to thank you guys for your continued support, tuning into the show. Please like and subscribe if you don't already, if you're just discovering us. And please share, the more people listen, the better. Maybe someday this could be my full-time job, and that would be a lovely, lovely pipe dream that I would love to live someday. Happy Halloween. Hope you have a safe and happy spooky day. Hope if you have children, you have fun with them. If not, you get to enjoy the season, watch some horror movies, eat some candy, chill out, see some cute kids come by your door dressed in costumes. It's always a fun time of year, and as I mentioned, it is my favorite time of the year. So, think of me while you're enjoying your Halloween. Our next episode will feature Kalman Andrzejowski, who is a Toronto, Ontario comic book artist, inker, letterer, penciler, designer, and has worked for Chapter House, for Captain Canuck. I believe he worked on the animated series as well. He's worked on some Dungeons & Dragons books, a bunch of other things, and is connected to the Raid Studio, who we've had Ramon Perez on before, who is also one of the founders of that studio. So very excited to talk to Kalman. Apparently he's a listener of the show, and if he is, and I haven't got a chance to talk to him in person yet. I hope I did not mangle his name. I will find out when we chat. But very excited to have him on the show, and it's going to be a great chat, as always. So tune into that in 2 weeks' time. In the meantime, stay safe, have fun, happy Halloween, and I'll catch you next time. The Graphic Histories Podcast is a proud partner of the United Federation of Podcasts.